Looking at Oberyn as he held the letter in his hands, tears streaming down his cheeks, he felt as if he was invading the man's privacy, as if he didn't belong here. Rhaenys rested silently against Oberyn's chest, gripping his silken coat tightly, both of them silent, almost sharing the grief and loss they felt. Jon turned away to give them time. He surprisingly didn't have to wait long, as he heard Rhaenys chirp and looked over his shoulder to see Oberyn holding out the letter. "Did you read this?" Oberyn asked, his eyes red from where he'd wiped his face. "It was not mine to read, my prince. She speaks of you and it calls you her son." Oberyn set a soft smile on his face as he said it. "My sister was too good for this world. Jaehaerys, far too good. She implores me to be like her. Read," he said as he handed Jon the letter. He took it from the prince, his hands shaking. Rhaenys flying to land on his shoulder, he moved to the bed and sat down, allowing his dragon to climb down his body and rest in his lap. And then he looked to Oberyn, who nodded, and so he began to read the letter. "My dearest brothers, if you are reading this letter, then the worst has happened, and our uncle has been unable to get me and the children to safety. All of our plans have failed terribly. I know you will blame Rhaegar, blame Lyanna, and even perhaps blame their son, my son. Do not. For if you do, you shame me, brothers. And when we meet again, I'll not forgive you for it. Rhaegar and I were never a love match. We tried. We did our duty. We brought 2 wonderful children into the world, and the love we may not have had for each other, we poured into them. Each day I spent in the hill that was King's Landing was a day too much. It bore down on me, wore me down, and I do believe had I been forced to live there, it would have broken me or killed me before long. So I suggested, and Rhaegar reluctantly agreed that we part. I could live my life free, and with my love in Dorne, and he could find someone else to share his life and heart with. This world, though, is a cruel, strange place, and while Rhaegar found his, mine own love was taken from me. Lyanna, though, was what he needed, what the realm needed, and together they would do what I could not, and the promised prince would come. It seems, though, that we had not fully accounted for the ambitions of greedy men, nor on the strength of the desire of those to see the dragons fall, and so what should have been the turning point turned into our greatest failure. But if you're both reading this letter, then brothers, all is not lost. Lyanna lives and her babe Jaehaerys has been born, and so my hopes, my dreams rest with him. Help him, brothers. Guide him. Be for him what I would have been. Be his family, for he will find in the days to come grave need of one. To Doran, my sweet older brother. I can only say I did my duty. I did so, at the cost of my own heart, and all I can think now as I write this is that duty is too high a price to pay when compared to love. For what is duty against the feel of a newborn in your arms, or the memory of a brother's smile? Wind and words, brother. We are only human, and the gods have fashioned us for love. That is our great glory, and our great tragedy. Oberyn, my dear, impulsive, rash brother, I ask you only to protect the boy. Oberyn, protect him as if he were Aegon, as if he were Rhaenys, for his brother and sister would have loved him as much as I love mine own. He is blood of my blood, brother. He is their brother just as you were mine. Remember that when you look upon my son. To Jaehaerys, do not blame yourself. Do not, because I do not. Remember that. You are a dragon, my son. Be a dragon and show them all that just like me, you are of Dorne. I am, and always shall be, unbowed, unbent, and unbroken. Elia Martell, mother of 3 and princess of Dorne. Jon placed the letter on the bed and began to cry loudly. He sobbed as Rhaenys chirped softly, her words offering comfort, but not immediately making it beyond the sadness he felt. He cursed Tywin Lannister, Amory Lorch, Gregor Clegane. He cursed them all. He felt it as Oberyn sat down on the bed beside him, felt his arm as it wrapped itself around his shoulder, taking care not to press too hard, though he doubted he'd have felt it anyway. I killed him, Jon said softly. Lorch, I killed him myself for what he did, he added. I heard he had died. How? I stabbed him once for everyone he said, shaking. Then she is avenged. It's not enough. I want to bring him back to life. I want to kill him again and again. It's not enough, he said, and Oberyn held him tighter. It's all we have, nephew, it's all we have. They sat there not saying a word. Rhaenys sitting between them both, Ghost laying on the floor looking at them silently as always. The black pup he had asked Loras to look after, having to tell Ghost it was all right to do so. He was thankful he had done it now. Thankful of the silence in the room. It was peaceful, though he felt anything but peace. The mountain, you're going for him still? He asked, breaking the silence. We both seek justice for our sister's nephew. You have had yours. It's time I tasted mine own. I had a vision. I saw at the fight something happen. You fell, slipped, I don't know. But he beat you. I saw him kill you and then your children. Jon said. A warning or a certainty? Oberyn asked. A warning, I think. Then I shall be most careful, Oberyn said with a smile. I want you to take Ghost with you. Why? I wish to see him fall, to see it for myself. Also, should things go wrong, I can help. Will you let me? I never turn down help from family, Oberyn said and then smiled at him. There is much we must discuss, Jaehaerys, much we must decide upon, but you have my spear should you wish it. I do, my prince, uncle. It is my sister's wish, and we both know sisters should have their way, Oberyn said, smirking when Rhaenys chirped. They talked then of memories of Elia, of stories. Oberyn said he'd not told anyone but Ilaria and his girls, and Jon could feel the sense of loss that Oberyn felt for his sister, a sense of loss he was feeling even more keenly now. Eventually, Oberyn felt the need to leave and turned to say his farewells, hugging him before promising they'd speak more upon his return. I would ask you to look after Ilaria and Cirilla and my other girls should the worst happen. I will speak to her of you if you'll allow it, Oberyn said. I would be honored to. But nothing will happen when you face him. It's not your day to die, Jon said, and Oberyn nodded. No, not mine, Oberyn said and smiled. He left a few moments later and Jon felt drained. He wasn't gone from the room more the moment when Jaime came in, and despite himself, despite the emotions he'd just gone through, Jon just ran to him. Are you well? Jaime asked as he held him. I am. I think it'll work out, he said. Oberyn is with us, Elia. She named me her son, Jon said, and Jaime nodded. Jaime stayed with him until he yawned, making them both laugh a little. Go get some rest. I'll speak to the others and let them know how it went, Jaime said. Jon nodded tiredly as he got into bed, Rhaenys and Ghost both curling up beside him. Tyrion. From the moment Jon had given him the book, he had been absorbed in it, wading through the daily grind of a maester reporting on mundane activities such as ordering supplies or talking of Rickard's constipation, to reading through the man basically calling the Warden of the North an idiot and his daughter a wilding whore who didn't know her place, that he may have to keep away from Jon. But it was the little pieces of things, the little notes, the language among the language which fascinated him. I've begun to lay the groundwork with the Lord, begun to show him the benefits, for all their sanctity about honor. All these lords are the same, and it's coin and influence which is their greatest desire. Tyrion read on. 269 Ac. Fostering must be taken on first if I can get him to agree to that. Then we can move on to the next bit. Casterly Rock is out of the question, as is the Red Keep, River Run perhaps. But despite the trade, there is no respect for the River Lords here. Highgarden too is something he'd not consider. Despite the ease which trade could be used as an incentive, it is to the Vale we must look. 270 AC. Baratheon's fostering creates both a problem and an opportunity. If we can get the Lord of the Vale to agree, a friendship could be formed between both boys. Perhaps then we could move forward with the second step. Tyrion read on through more nonsense and random thoughts. Apparently the Maester loved the winter roses, as they reminded him of Old Town, the flowers being one of the few things in the north the man had an interest in. He found no more on fostering, but he knew Ned Stark fostered in the Vale under Jon Arryn. Anyway, it took him some time before he found anything else worth reading, and in the end, when he did, he was too tired to read it that night. After placing the journal on his table, he lay down and fell asleep, drifting off and dreaming of flying above the clouds, looking down on the land beneath him, a smile upon his face. When he woke the next morning, he cursed Jon and Rhaenys for making him dream so, though he smiled and wondered if he asked would Jon take him with him when he flew. He had his meal brought to him rooms, broke his fast, and began to read once again. 275 Ac. The heir is a brute, quick to anger and slow-witted. The boy cares for naught but rutting like a savage, riding horses and fighting. He is and never shall be a friend of ours. The girl, too, is no better than a savage. The younger son quite malleable, though best kept from his sister. But it seems in Eddard there is some hope, as his friendship with Baratheon is as strong as we had wished for, and he clings to honor as if it's a shield. 276 AC. After much hard work, it seems there is light, my friends. A betrothal has been made, and though we are far from done, it seems we get closer each day. 278 AC. The woman has fallen ill, and though I have done what I could, or at least looked that way, this is a boon we cannot afford to miss. She is not long for this world, and with her opposition to our plans, will fade from Winterfell for good. The Lord may listen to his lady, but with her gone, he'll be more susceptible, and the dragons are as weak as they've ever been. 279 AC. I have received the news, and it's better than we could have hoped. A weak woman married to the dragons. The time to act is upon us, and with the lady passed, I believe he'll consider the match. I've laid the groundwork, and the rest is up to my brothers, for I cannot do it all myself. Tyrion sat looking incredulously at the book in front of him. Everything the Starks had done for almost 10 years had been planned out, strategized, and made to happen, not by the will of the Lord or gods, but by men, gray-robed men. He felt his hunger rise and the stiffness in his legs, and so, after placing the journal in a drawer, he took a walk and was surprised at the lateness of the hour. He walked to the kitchen to find something to fill his hungry stomach. Grabbing some cheese and some cold meat, he sat down at the table and began to eat. "What has you up at this hour, nephew?" He heard his uncle's voice as he swallowed some wine. "I was reading the journal Jon gave you." "I'd hazard a guess." "Aye, it's fascinating. They planned it, Geryon. What Jon suggested, they set the seeds for it." "The rebellion?" Geryon asked, shocked. Yes, I'm not sure exactly. Nothing in it says that in so many words. It talks of the dragons being weak, but mainly it seems the Maester was steering House Stark in the direction they wanted. Oh, and who are they? They, I think, are more Maesters. Perhaps the Citadel itself, as to how, firstly, by fostering Ned Stark in the Vale, then the betrothal of Brandon Stark to Catelyn Tully. Tyrion said, noticing his uncle's scowl when he mentioned the Tullys. "Why, I mean a betrothal, a fostering. What benefits would that bring them against the Targaryens?" "On its own, nothing, but push enough the right way. Did you not think it was strange that in just a couple of moves 3 kingdoms were joined by blood and a 4th by the obligation to its lord's foster sons?" Tyrion asked. "Not at the time. Lyanna Stark and Robert Baratheon." Catelyn Tully and Brandon Stark and Jon Arryn right in the middle of it, Tyrion said. The North, Riverlands, Stormlands, and Vale, Tyrion said, raising a finger after each of them. 4 against 3, and the odds are suddenly shifted. By the gods, it could have been 5, Tyrion said loudly. What do you mean? Lysa Tully, there was a proposal to betroth Lysa and Jaime. It never got anywhere, but I know Hoster tried it. Tyrion said, his faces showed disgust as he spoke of the Tullys. Uncle, what happened with you and the Tullys? Another time. Tyrion, let me think, Garyon said, and Tyrion nodded. Hoster, Jon Arryn. They knew the game too well. They'd be hard men to manipulate. But Robert was a boy, and Rickard Stark not used to how things were played here. The Maester, what was his name? Flowers. Wally's Flowers. A bastard from the Reach. We need to find out more. Tyrion, if the Maesters are involved, then none of us are safe? It wouldn't be all of them, but we need to be careful. We should keep our letters down to the minimum and only send general ones through the Maesters. Anything else we deliver by hand. I'll talk to Jaime. Leave him be tonight. He and Jon had a rough one. What happened? Have you really been locked away in your room that long? Tyrion said, laughing. I must have been, Tyrion said, shaking his head as he laughed too. Oberyn knows he and Jon spoke after the tourney, Tyrion said. The tourney? But that's not until... Gods, I missed the damn tourney, Tyrion said, and Garyon burst out laughing. You did. Oberyn is with us. Tyrion set a proud smile on his face. He is? I told you he and Jon spoke. Must have been some talk. It was, Jaime said. It took a lot out of Jon. Anyway, he stayed with him for a bit to make sure he was well. So give it tonight, and speak to him when he and you are better rested. Now I need to get some rest myself. We'll be heading out for Castamere on the morrow. Are things set? They are. Word will have reached him that Adam competed too. Good. You won't be involving yourself, will you? Tyrion asked worriedly. Only to a point. Good night, nephew. Good night, uncle. He ended up picking up the plate and walking back to his room. His appetite had left him, but he knew he'd wake hungry later. Tyrion. He rode to Lannisport after saying goodbye to Joy that morning. He was grateful that both Sansa and Marjorie, along with Loras and Brienne, were there when breaking their fast, as Jon had decided to sleep on. He could understand why, as the letter left for Oberyn and Doran had a message for him in it too, according to Jaime, a message which had caused Jon both comfort and upset. Joy had for once not been looking over his shoulder to see if Jon entered the room. If anything, it was Marjorie who seemed most put out, though he did sense her worry also. When it came time to say goodbye to his daughter, he had been pleased to see Sansa holding her hand with Marjorie making faces at her to make her laugh. Just seeing them together, he knew he was right. She belonged at the Rock for now. Arriving at the house, Oberyn was staying in. He saw his daughters were already saddled up and ready to go. Oberyn, though, was speaking to the youngest of them, who it seemed would be staying here, before he turned to kiss his paramour goodbye. Lord Geryon, I didn't expect it to be you to escort us, Oberyn said. Climbing onto his horse, I am the only one of my men the wolf will follow, he said, turning to point at the white wolf who was sitting at the gate. Dire wolves. All my life I had hoped to see one, and would never have thought it'd be here in the west, Oberyn said, smiling. And now there are 3 of them here, Garyon said, smiling. They rode out the gates. Oberyn looking back to smile at his paramour. Garyon closed his eyes, picturing blonde hair and a smiling face, and shook his head to clear it of the thoughts of her. When they reached the gates of Lannisport itself, they met with the rest of their company. 40 of his best men would take part in what was to come along with Sir Adams, 200 and another 50 from the Rock. Is this all the men? Oberyn asked. No, There are more to meet us. This is just the escort. We've a ways to go." "How long?" "A week at most, my prince," Garion said, and Oberyn nodded. Listening to the banter of Oberyn's daughters made him think on his own even more. He saw her as regularly as he could, and when he rode to the rock, he stayed for as long as he could, but he still questioned himself every single time. His mind told him it was for the best. She had Jon and Loras, Kevin's and Jenna's boys. For now, she also had Sansa and Marjorie for a couple of moons at least. She was happy he knew that. He could see that. And yet he still worried he was failing as a father in some way. Ever since Jon had arrived, it had been different. He saw her come out of her shell, saw her mother in her, in how she loved to play and in her mischievous smiles, and how she could wrap Jon around her finger with barely any effort. Every day he had seen her look more and more like Bryony, and he cursed himself. Jon and the Tullys, all for different reasons, and all with varying degrees of blame. Jon. He cursed for showing him how he had failed her mother, how instead of raising their daughter and loving her, he had almost ignored her and left her to servants to raise. Yes, he had spent time with her before Jon arrived, but seeing him play with her, read to her, he cursed him, and was also so damn thankful for him. He felt so much love for the boy, for showing her the love of a brother, and for showing him just how close he was from turning into his own. Himself he cursed for allowing Tywin to have his way, for bowing to his brother's will, and for what in the end it cost him and his daughter. He should have been stronger, should have put up more of a fight, but his brother was right. He had been a foolish man who enjoyed song and wine and being a Lannister far more than being a father. Though what was true then was not true anymore. Now he wanted nothing more than for his daughter to grow and be loved and to have the life she deserved. "You seem lost in thought, my friend," Oberyn said beside him. "What? Sorry," he replied, laughing. "A woman, my lord?" "Excuse me," he said, confused. "I was saying she must have been some woman, my lord, if you're thinking of her still." "Ha, she was and she will be," he said softly. They rode on and stayed that night next to a stream. When the tents were set up, he sat with Oberyn and his daughters, watched their banter, and could see a father's pride in the prince when each one of the girls spoke. He ate and drank and laughed, though his heart wasn't in it, his thoughts still on Joy and Bryony. Taking his leave, he went to his tent. But try as he might, sleep was hard to find, and in the end, he got back up and went out to sit by the fire, drinking cool water and staring at the flames. He should have done more, should have told her to stay. But in the end, he didn't. And when he found out what had happened, it sent him into a tailspin. Had Tywin not died in the rebellion, he may have killed him himself. So what if it made him a kinslayer? Some kin deserved to be slayed. But his brother was dead, and so his thoughts turned to the Tullys. It was their land. They were lords of it. They were supposed to keep the people safe, to keep her safe. Finding out Jon had been attacked on those very same lands had brought it all back to him. Stirred up memories he pushed down deep inside, though the more he thought on it, any mention of the Tullys seemed to do that. But since Jon's return, it was worse, and now at night when he did find sleep, it was to images of her face, of her smile, and it hurt even more. Why had he let her go? Why had he not gone with her? Why had they not protected her? Jenna. She knew she should speak with Jon, as there were things the boy needed to start to do, things he would need to learn, of the faith for one. Though that could wait. But other simple things, etiquette, and more of the interrelationships of the houses. But she allowed the boy his free time, allowed him spend it with Joy and his sister, with Brienne and Loras, and with Marjorie. And she smiled when she saw the two of them together, though he had been a little more absent and certainly more reticent since the night of the tourney. For now, though she had bigger concerns, so she arranged her transport, and to Lannisport she would go. Kevin needed to be brought on board, and brought on board now. He'd stewed for long enough. Walder and Tion would join her, and she wiped the boys' faces herself once they'd broken their fast. Thankfully, they had kept their clothes clean for once. Once done, she walked them to the lift and took it down to the awaiting carriage. It was in the end a pleasant journey, the weather just the right side of warm. They arrived at Kevin's residence, and immediately her boys were off and running when they saw Martin and Willem. It was the last she'd see of their clean clothes, she knew. She was escorted to his solar and found him sitting quietly reading over missives. In the shadows, he looked so much like Tywin that it caught her out for a moment. "Kevin," she said, walking and taking a seat. "Jenna, I wasn't expecting you. Were we to meet?" "No, but we need to speak." "On what?" he asked. "You know what? We need to know your position, Kevin," she said, and he sighed. "I don't understand any of this, Jenna. This boy, John. I know what he's done for us, for our family, and he seems a nice enough lad, but King? Why should we support him? Why should we support him? Why not our own blood? They have no claim, Kevin. Should it get out, we'd be facing enemies from everywhere. John, however, has the best claim of all. He also has the backing of more than just us. Ooh, the North, the Reach. He may even manage to bring Dorne in, given what Gurion said about Oberyn." She said with a smile, "Oberyn? Why would the Viper support him?" "I don't know the exact reasons. Something about a letter, but he's with him. Kevin, as are we, so where are you?" "Jenna, Will you stand with your family, Kevin?" she said, looking directly at him. "He's not my family," he said, shaking his head. "He is mine. He is Jaime's and Tyrion's and Gyrion's. He may not have our blood or our name, but John has made himself part of this family from the very first moment he came here. Did you know about Joy? I know he was friendly with her. It's more than that. He's her brother Kevin by choice, if not by blood. Have you seen him with Martin or Willem, with Walder or Tion? I know the boys like him. Jenna, he's older and spends time with them when he can. I get that. But there's more to being a king than that," he said, shaking his head. "Aye, there is. There's trade and making sure people are looked after, making the lives of those you serve better. Has he not done that? Is your own life not better because of him?" "He had nothing to do with it. That was Jaime's choice," he said angrily. "It's no more than I deserve," he added. "Aye, it was and it is. I'll not argue with you on that. You do deserve it. Tywin was a fool not to see it, but have you ever asked how it was possible? How Jaime was able to do it?" "Aye," she said. "The children," he said resignedly, "will be looked after. Or do you think John would harm them?" "No, I may not know him as well as you do, but I know that. He also has a dragon, Kevin," she said, and he looked at her in shock. "That's impossible." "Aye, I know, and yet I've seen her. He has a dragon. That alone would be enough," she said, and saw her brother smile. "It would, all right. I'm in," he said. And she nodded. "Good. I'd have hated to see you burn," she said before he laughed with her when he realized it was a joke. She shared a glass of wine with him, spoke on Dorna, who was off with Lancel visiting her father, and then brought up the wedding. "What did you think of it?" she asked. "It was a grand affair. You did an amazing job, sister." "I did." "Yet did you notice who was missing?" "Aye, I noticed. If Tywin were here, he'd have fumed," he said with a soft chuckle. "Well, I suppose we'll have to fume for him, brother. Robert and Cersei, I thought, would come." He said then. "Something happened with them according to Tyrion's men. Cersei was ill or something. I'm more concerned with the Vale," Jenna said. "Jon Arryn?" he asked, and she nodded. "We cut off our support, but I don't know, would that be enough?" "Perhaps. He always was a prickly fucker," Kevin said, and Jenna laughed loudly. "We need to pay them back. Those who didn't come. We need to show them our displeasure," Jenna said, and he nodded. Hit them where it hurts, in their coin purses. It's time we raise prices, brother, on the associate supplies. Will Jamie go for it? He will when he sees who we're raising prices on, she said. John. It had taken him a few days after his talk with Oberyn to feel any way normal, to be able to just look at himself. What to say, Rhaenys had helped him some, and he had, while not pretending to be ill, spent far more time in his room than he should. He felt bad for it, but he knew he was no fun to be around either. Still, he had tried to put on a happier face. When he spent time with Marjorie or Sansa, it was more difficult. With Joy, it was easier. Arthur and Jaime had spoken to him, and Loras had been especially eager to change his mood. He found, though not being able to spar had left him almost unable to shake it at times. Tyrion had come by to talk to him, and then had obviously changed his mind. Jon actually smiled at him for that. He just wasn't ready to deal with any new revelations. Marjorie had been the closest to getting him out of the mood, though. Having her come spend time with him alone was something he had gotten used to now, and something he knew he'd eventually miss. When he was alone, he spent his time drawing. His memories of Elia were fresh in his mind, and he found himself as drawn to her images as he had his mother's when he'd first drawn her. This woman had wished him to be part of her family. She had named him her son, even though he was no blood of hers, and that monster had taken her from him. At night he warged into ghost watching as they got closer and closer to Castamere, as he waited for the chance to see the monster fall. Brother, it does no good to sit around so, Rhaenys said, dragging him from his thoughts. I know. It's just, it could have been so different. It could have, but it's not Jay, that life, the life we could have had. It's a dream, brother. This is what he have. This is all we have. It's not, is it enough? It's what we have, brother. We have each other. My mother, yours, father, egg. We carry them with us, with both of us. Right now, we're all that remains of that life, and we must live for them, love for them, be dragons for them. Rhaenys said, I can't lose anyone else. Ray, I don't think I can take losing anyone else. I wish I could tell you that you won't. Brother, I wish it could be so. Oberyn is safe and well for now, brother. Rhaenys said, I'm happy you're with me, sister, he said, reaching out to stroke the dragon's neck, making the chirps turn to a soft purring sound. We are bonded, brother. Where you go, I go, now and forever, he said. And she chirped her agreement. Deciding to go for a walk to further clear his head, he left the room to find Walder on guard. He bid him hello, and together they walked to the lift. It was early, far too soon to break his fast, and so they took the lift to the top. The double tower was the highest point of Casterly Rock, and to access it, you needed to climb a set of stairs once you left the lift. For some reason, it was here. Jon felt the need to go. Walder followed behind him, and the guards they met let them pass. Once they reached a point they could go no further. Jon turned and looked down, and below him, the west stretched out for miles. How high up they were he couldn't tell, and why he had come here was even less clear to him. Yet he stood silently, looking out, almost as if he was waiting for something, for some sign. You did well in the tourney, Walder, he said, turning to his guard. I lost, Walder said. Aye, no shame in losing as long as you learn from it, have you? He asked, repeating a lesson Jaime had taught him many years ago. I have. I should have taken the girl out first, Walder said, and Jon nodded. Aye. Are you ready for the ceremony? The knighting. Do we have to do it that way? All but the gods, Walder. But Arthur said it needs to be like that if you wish to be Kingsguard. I am a Kingsguard, Walder said, smirking, and Jon laughed. You know what he meant. I do. Thought of a name. I have. Sir Walder of House Alliers, Walder said, and Jon nodded. A fine name, my friend. He would be proud you thought of him, as am I, Jon said as he felt it at the back of his mind. Jon, are you well? Walder asked, seeing his expression darken. Walder, I need to warg. Something's happening. I must sit, John said as he felt the pounding in his head before he fell to the ground. He was in Ghost, but it was his wolf who had called him, and not the other way around. He saw it then in front of him. What it was that had Ghost so panicked, the fight was almost done, and he was too far away. He tired to run, but he'd never make it. Ghost would never make it. And then there was pain, blinding, agonizing pain. A screaming voice, and then nothing but white light, and the pain faded. Jerian. They reached Castamere, and he felt better for seeing the place. Riding through the gates, he could see the surprise on Oberyn's face at just how built up the castle was. They would eat and sleep here tonight, and tomorrow he'd show Oberyn where things would happen. He nodded to Davin, who had rode out to meet him, and who looked suspiciously at the Dornish. He ordered baths made ready for Oberyn and his daughters, and had his servants escort them to their rooms before turning to speak to his Castellan. So that's the Red Viper. Aye, it is. Is everything prepared? The men from the Rock arrived 2 days ago, and I received word from our men in the hills that the mountain's men have set up camp overlooking the route. Any close to here? No. Wherever they're getting their information on our movements, it's not from simply looking at them. Davin said, annoyed at the idea of a spy in their midst. I know where they got their information from.
Place!
It's not a problem, he said, Tyrion. Having turned that spy moons ago, why are the Dornish coming along? The Viper wants the mountain, and we may need someone that good to take the fucker down. You think he's good enough? I think he is, Jerian said with a smirk. Davin nodded, happy enough at this, and Jerian walked to his own room. He almost collapsed into the bed, his lack of sleep finally overwhelming him. It was a few hours later he woke, still fully dressed and shaking. He dreamt of her again, dreamt of her calling for him, of her screaming his name. Jumping from the bed, he stumbled to the privy and threw up, seeing her face. The blood, all of it was too much. The men around her had been the same faceless men they always were. But the one standing laughing had been Edmure Tully this time. Other times it had been Hoster, but lately it was Edmure he saw. Either way, they were both responsible. It was their land, their small folk. They'd not protected, their village they'd allowed those men into. They may have caught them later. They may have faced the king's justice. But that didn't bring Bryony back. That didn't give his girl the mother she'd lost. They hadn't even managed to give her a proper burial, and had hushed things up and bought off the villagers with coin or threats. But they had known and done nothing, he had found out later. They had known those men were terrorizing the small folk, and Hoster had left it to his idiot son to sort them out, to solve the problem. Rather than do that, though, rather than ride out and find those men, the boy had drank and whored his way across the riverlands. In the end, it was others who took it upon themselves, almost shaming him to do his damn job, and Garion hated him for that, hated them all for that. My lord. A raven, his maester said as he left the room, handing him the scroll. The mountain has arrived, Adam. He walked to the hall to find some of his men had already arrived to eat. Davin sat at the high table with Prince Oberyn and his daughters. He was happy to see he'd known to do that without his instruction. Though he did know Gerion's own feeling on bastards, so perhaps he didn't need to be told, he thought as he sat down beside the prince. You look terrible, my friend, Oberyn said, and he smiled back weakly at the prince. Just tired, you should read this. He handed him the note. The enormity that rides is here. Oberyn said, smiling. He is. All is set tomorrow. I'll show you where you need to be. Good. Jerion turned to see his men jump to their feet when Ghost walked in. He smirked, looking at the wolf as he strolled past them, walking to the high table. Ghost sat down at his feet, and he wondered if this was how Jon felt, as he looked out to shocked expressions. Oberyn looked at the wolf, and then him, and shook his head. Davin, who knew the wolf's son from his own visits to the rock, just ignored him. He called for food to be brought, and for a leg of deer, for Ghost, who licked his hand. "The wolf likes you?" Oberyn said. "Aye. Me and Ghost get on well, thank the gods," he said, rubbing the wolf's head. "You're fond of the boy?" "More than fond, my prince," Geryon said, and Oberyn smiled at him. Good. He found he had no real appetite. He ate a little and drank far too much. But the prince and his daughters were good company, and even Davin warmed up to them by the end of the night. He was drunk by the time he went to bed, and it allowed him a dreamless sleep. Though he woke up in no mood for riding, they broke their fast, and he readied himself to set out. He would show them where the ambush would take place, and then despite his own feelings would return home. A large part of him wished to join in, to help take the mountain and his men down, to exorcise some of the demons from his mind, but he couldn't take the risk. Should anything go wrong then, Joy would be alone, and that was something he swore he'd never let happen. They rode out, and it took them a couple of hours to reach the spot. His archers would line the route. They'd bleed the mountain, and his men, and the rest would be up to the prince. "I wish you good fortune, Prince Oberyn," he said as he was ready to ride back. "I thank you. It's a good spot," Oberyn said, looking around the valley. "My men will follow your orders. Adam and the others will chase them and will bleed them so you'll have less to face. My girls and I will deal with any who make it. Are you sure you wish them here for this?" Geryon asked. "Elia was their aunt, Aegon their cousin. I could no more stop them from being here than myself," Oberyn said. "I hope you get the justice you seek," Geryon said. "It's not justice I seek, it's blood. The debt he owes my family can only be paid by blood," Oberyn said. And Geryon nodded. Oberyn. Patience was never his greatest strength, and he had been feeling more and more impatient as the days had gone on. Riding to Castamere, staying in the castle, and now here in this field, all of it testing him. But the goal he sought, the prize he came for, made it all worthwhile. Seeing her, hearing her speak, he closed his eyes and smiled, grateful he'd had the opportunity to do that once again. He looked to the white wolf who was crouching and keeping more silent than he or his daughters could ever do, and he smiled. He was not the only one seeking vengeance for someone he loved. "Are you in there, nephew?" he whispered, and the wolf looked at him, and he believed he saw him there. Having him with him felt right somehow. It was like he had told Geryon he would not stop his daughters from being here. He'd not stop the boy she considered her son, the boy who had avenged her daughter. He wondered how he'd have taken the news from the boy. Had he not shown him what he did? Had he not proved to him who he was, who she was, or had he not read his sister's wishes written in her own hand? Would he have blamed the boy? Blamed a child for the sins of their father? Would he have welcomed and accepted the boy? He honestly couldn't tell, but he was happy he had no need to make those choices. He had pledged his spear to the boy. Doran would do the same, he was sure. Doran would see her son on the throne, and he would be there to make it happen. He owed it to her as much as he owed this to her. Vengeance and justice. Jaehaerys had proven he knew the importance of both, that he was a son of Dorne. "How much longer?" Obara asked impatiently. "I don't know, sister." "He'll be here when he's here," Nym said. Is that Daemon?" Tyene asked, and he watched as the horse raced towards them, the men thankfully seeing the color he wore and holding their fire. "It is," Obara said. Daemon's horse raced past them, and he waited as his former squire hobbled it and ran back towards them. He was out of breath and covered in dust. "The attack's begun. They blocked off the route," he said, panting as he lay on the grass. "Is he with them?" Oberyn asked. "He is my prince, for Elia and Aegon," he said, and his daughters and Daemon responded. Elia and Aegon. He looked to the white wolf, who nodded and then turned to watch the path ahead. The valley they picked was a killing field, one way in and large mountains either side. It was narrow, and though there was plenty of grass, it was almost barren. At the other end, 50 men from Casterly Rock protected the way out. Once in here, it was fight or die, and that's exactly what Oberyn was ready to do. It seemed to take an age for the sound of the horses to reach them. How many men had made it, he didn't know. But when he looked, he felt a flicker of doubt. The mountain had more than 10 with him as they charged, and then the arrows flew. The sky was full of them, it seemed, and they soon found their mark. Men, horses. And finally, the mountain himself was toppled, and when he saw it, he rose to his feet and moved towards him. The enormity that rides is mine. Do with the others what you wish. He shouted as his daughters, Daemon and Ghost, fell upon the men. He looked around, seeing the mountain rise to his feet, his greatsword drawn to his left. Obara and Tiain were fighting 3 men, Daemon and Nym fighting 2 on his right. There were 4 other men getting to their feet. None of them would manage to help their friends, though, as he watched the White Wolf do. It's deadly work, and the screams resonated around the field. The Lannister men came out from their hiding places and lined up, ready should the mountain run. But he could see the man had no intention of doing that. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son, he said, raising his spear. He moved closer to the mountain, whose greatsword was larger. Then Oberyn. There the monster stood like the Braavosi Titan himself, legs apart, heavy plate armor dark and gray, and the huge sword held in front of him as he looked out at the carnage around him. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son, he said angrily. He spun in the air, holding his spear before him. He dragged it down the front of the plate mail, the mountain raising his sword in defense. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son. He turned and came at him from the side, moving fast. He caught the side of the helm, almost, but not quite, knocking it from the monster's head. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son. He moved faster now, the greatsword swinging over his head as he ducked. He caught the mountain on the chest, across the side, on the back, his spear working as an extension of his arm. He hit the helm again and knocked it off before catching the mountain with a slash to the face which brought blood and a bellow from the man. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son. He looked to see his children were done, the men dead, Ghost chasing down one who tried to run away. The White Wolf's bloodlust, just like his own, not even close to being sated. He jumped in the air and brought the edge of the spear down on the mountain's arm, the blow not penetrating the heavy armor, but he felt the bone break from the impact. Not that it made a difference, as unlike most men, the mountain wielded his greatsword single-handed. He jumped back and then to the side as his attacks brought an angry response. He felt the wind from the blade as it came close to his face when he ducked. He spun left and feinted right, and when the mountain took the step that way, he was upon him again. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son. His slash caught the man square in the face. The scream, this time one of pain as he took his eye, the blood spurting. But still the man came forward. He got caught with a kick when he got too close, and it threw him almost 10 feet away. He felt winded, and before he had a chance to react and get back to his feet, he was dodging the stabbing of the blade. He kicked his legs out, catching the mountain's foot, slowing him down, though he felt the pain in his own leg. But it bought him time and allowed him to get to his feet. He saw Obara and Nym as they moved forward, Daemon too, while Tiain coated a spear with manticore venom. His own spear was laying somewhere in the grass, and as he nodded to Tiain, he motioned the others to stay back. The mountain was his. He jumped 3 times, spinning each of them, and felt it on the last. His leg was hurt, his movement impaired. But he grabbed the spear and moved forward, watching as his daughters moved away to give him the space he needed. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son. He moved forward, favoring one leg, and heard his daughters' worried voices. But he smiled to put them at ease, and instead focused on the mountain's left side, his blind side. He moved in and began to attack. Quick thrusts pushing the mountain back, he forced him further into the grass. His daughters looking on as he caught the mountain under the armpit, he thrust the spear and felt it hit flesh. the manticore venom entering his blood. Elia Martell, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her son. For all you've taken from me, for everything you made her suffer, for every day I've mourned her, I damn you," he said as he moved in for the kill. His slashes were crisp and clear. He spun the spear as he'd been trained, as he'd practiced every day since he'd first picked one up. He moved forward and caught the mountain sword, forcing it down, and then taking his blade off it. He aimed for the monster's neck. He moved forward and felt the stone give way under his foot, felt himself lose his balance, and he watched on in horror as the mountain snapped his spear shaft in half. "Father," he heard the agonized screams of his daughters. "My prince," he heard Damon shout. As he fell to the ground, he looked up to see the shadow standing over him, saw the sword rise, and he waited. Get away from me," the mountain shouted. "Die, you demon birds, die." He heard the man shout as the great sword slashed around him in all directions at some invisible enemy. "Get out of my head." He heard the mountain's panicked voice as the sword fell from his hand, and the man screamed loudly as he fell to his knees. He jumped up and grabbed the sword, turning and swinging it with all his might. He caught the mountain just across the jaw. The blade was sharp, the aim true, and he watched as the top half of the man's head flew off. The blood poured and the thud was loud as the mountain fell. And as he looked down on the corpse, he felt both a sense of relief and peace. He had done it. He had avenged her. He looked to see his daughters running towards him. "Father, Father, are you well?" Tiain said as she reached him. "I am you, Obara, Nim." "You are unhurt?" he said, looking at his daughter as his other two girls reached him. "We are well, Father," Tiain said. "Damon?" "I am unharmed, my prince." He saw him then, the white wolf, as it walked over and looked down on the mountain's corpse before he cocked his leg and began to piss.